Hi, this is Auntie Barbara again, and today I want to tell you another story about God's amazing power. And we're going to talk about his power to heal. And you know, sometimes we do things in life, and I'm sure that you've had this happen to you, that you've done something you know wasn't right. I mean, maybe mommy said, don't do this. You shouldn't go outside right now. You should stay inside. And maybe you went outside. Maybe you did something you weren't really supposed to do. And then you got in trouble. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about a little boy named Major. And Major, he got in some really big trouble because, he was a little boy and he did something he wasn't supposed to do. But don't let me get too far ahead in my story. Let's go and see what happened with Major. So, Major went to a school where he was supposed to be near to doing the right thing all by himself because he didn't have his mommy and daddy there to watch what he did. He only had his dean. He was there all by himself. And so he would go with his friends, and they liked to go play together outside, and they would run and climb trees together. And then the bells would ring at the school, and he would run back to the house, back to his room where he slept. And when they would close the door at night and they would lock it, that was a time when he had to stay in his room. He couldn't run around anymore. It wasn't allowed. But of course, that was to protect him, right? But Major wasn't sure that he liked that. Now, let me tell you what he also loved to do. Major loved to go swimming. Now, this school, they didn't have a lot of money. And so, in order to take a bath and to wash their clothes, they had a pond. It wasn't very far from the house, and they would go and they would wash their clothes on the rock by the pond, and they would do their bathing at the pond. That was the only water they had at the school, was at the pond. And so they would take a bath. Have you ever taken a bath in a pond? Well, that's what Major had to do. He had to take his bath in the pond. Now, at first, when he was a little bit younger and he would go to the pond, he was so afraid of the water because he didn't know how to swim. But one day he fell in the pool and he banged around and splashed around until suddenly he was like, oh, hey, I can do this. And he started swimming. And then after that, oh, he wanted to swim every day. Well, you know how boys are sometimes. One night, after the door to his dorm had been closed and locked, Major and his friends thought, you know what? It would be fun to go swimming in the nighttime, wouldn't it? And so they went to the window and they opened the window quietly and they climbed out the window. Shh, don't make much noise, he said to his friend. Shh. They climbed down the side of the room, outside, and they started down the path to the little pond. But they hadn't gotten very far at all, and suddenly Major felt something like a prick on his foot, but it was like a sharp pain. And he screamed. His friend said, shh. But then they looked at him and he kept screaming. And you know what it was? It was a baby cobra. It was small. You know, baby cobras, when they bite you, they're more dangerous than even a big cobra. Because the bigger a cobra is, when it's older, it knows not to put all of its poison out at one time. When it bites, it just puts enough poison to stun the animal that it's trying to kill. Or a person, it would only give enough venom or poison just to make it be paralyzed. But a baby cobra, they don't know how much venom to control. And so when they bite you, they put all their venom in at one time. So suck. Well, I'll tell you what, when they shined that light and Major saw that baby cobra right next to his foot, you can imagine how scared he was. And his foot hurt so bad. Already it was hurting so bad just a few seconds after the cobra had bit it. His friends panicked. Quickly, they killed the snake and then they grabbed his leg and they took off their t-shirts that they had and they tied it around his leg really tight as quick as they could. All 3 t-shirts they tied around his leg and they pulled on them as tight as they could. And then they picked him up and they ran back to the dorm. They didn't care that they were going to get in really big trouble now because they were already in really big trouble. They realized that this was life or death. They had to go really quickly. And so they banged on the door of the dean. Please, we need help. We need help. And the dean came to the door and he saw, and they were talking, everyone, a snake, snake bit, snake bite, snake pond, pool. Everything came out of their mouths at one time. The dean looked at them and he quickly knew what to do. They cut the wound, and so here's Major. It already hurts so bad, but of course this is what they have to do to get the poison out, right? And so they cut his foot and they start pushing and squeezing the poison out to make it bleed as much as possible. And back then, they thought that fire also pulled poison out. And so they lit matches and they put them on the wound. And poor Major, he was in real pain now. And then as quickly as they could, they put him in a Jeep and they drove him to the hospital. But by the time he got to the hospital, poor Major, his foot was like that big. It had swollen up like a ball. Oh, and it hurt so bad. Boy, do you think he wished he had been obedient and not gone out at night when he wasn't supposed to? Boy, you're sure right if you say yes, because he wished he had stayed in his bed. He wished he had listened to his dean. Oh, how he wished that. And the other thing was, he was really scared. He was really afraid because he knew that a cobra bite can be very deadly. And he didn't want to die. He was just a young boy. Lord, forgive me. Forgive me. What have I done? What have I done? Do you think Jesus forgave him? Oh, yes. Our Jesus forgave him. Jesus always forgives. Major had to stay in the hospital for a whole month because of the damage that snake bite did to his leg and to his health. But God was with him that whole month that he was in the hospital. It took a long time for his foot to heal. You see, the poison makes the skin start breaking and falling apart. And so it took time, but God healed him. After 1 month, he was well. What a miracle. God had saved his life. And even though he had done something naughty, something he wasn't supposed to do, and there was a consequence, a very bad consequence, God still was there with him. And God healed him. Next time you're tempted to do something that you're not supposed to do, remember this story and remember what happened to Major when he didn't obey. But I also want you to know what happened to Major when he grew up. You see, when Major grew up, he married a beautiful woman and he had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. And here you can see Major and his wife and his 3 children. So Major was blessed with a beautiful family. But I'll tell you something else about Major. You see, Major decided to dedicate his life to God. He decided that God was someone he wanted to give all his heart to. And so he decided to work for God. And now he is the director of a school, an orphanage for children. You see, God saved his life, and now he can be the father to all of these children you see in the picture. This happened because Major decided to follow Jesus with all his heart. And he's so thankful that God saved his life way back then when he had been disobedient. Because now he can help to save the lives and give children a good education, a place to stay, a home. And yeah, he remembers when he was living in the dorm too, a long time ago. And yes, he tells his story to the children to warn them so that they'll follow what they're told to do because it's protecting them. So remember, next time you're tempted to do something you're not supposed to do, that there are consequences, and sometimes they happen pretty fast, and sometimes they can be pretty bad. But also remember that God is with you, and He will help you. Thank you for listening. Until next time, it's Auntie Barbara saying goodbye.